There's something really addictive about adventure and about that feeling of flow and purpose, because life becomes so simple. It's really binary. You achieve your mission and you survive, or you don't.
Welcome to the Bucket List Life Podcast with Trav Bell, the world's #1 bucket list expert. Bucket List Life's mission is to help you get off the treadmill, stop Groundhog Days, hack your habits, and live a regret-free life. Because we know life's way too short not to live your bucket list life. So please welcome your host, Trav Bell, the Bucket List Guy.
Hey Bucket Listers, welcome to another episode of the Bucket List Life Podcast, and I'm super stoked that we've got this guest on today. Talk about adventure, talk about getting uncomfortable and doing hard things on purpose. It's Justin Jonesy Jones. How are you, brother?
You could Trav yourself, mate. What's been going on?
I'm very, very well. I'm really happy that you've found some time. Whereabouts are you in the world right now?
I'm down on Bruny Island, Tasmania. So I'm on an island, off an island, off an island. So it's fairly remote. And mate, I got to say, get it off my chest to start with, mate. I haven't been ducking you. I know we've been meaning to do this for a little while. I haven't been ducking you.
No. I'm surprised you're on grid and we've actually got, connection. It's pretty off grid down there, isn't it?
It is. I mean, like, if the internet's dodgy at all, I'm running off. I should be using Starlink, but I'm running off wireless satellite, connection at the moment. It gets a bit spicy every now and then, drops out, so it's a bit of fun. And this is what I call the sauna. It's a shearer's quarters on this property that I live on. They've turned into an office.
Wow. What was the shift? Because you haven't been down there for too long, right?
2020 was the shift. So just through all the travels I've done around Australia, I fell in love with Tassie and tried to make the move like in 2017, I'm going to say, 2018, try to make the move and couldn't quite make it gel. Come COVID along, it ruined a lot of plans of ours, but we turned that into a positive and we made that tree sea change down here to Tassie from Sydney.
Yeah, and we were just talking off air about, like, we're going to get into your amazing adventures, of which I've followed for years. And I haven't just bought this book like yesterday. I've had this book on my shelf, your book on my shelf. It's called Crossing the Ditch, Two Mates, a Kayak, and the Conquest of the Tasman. Amazing story. We'll get into that. There you guys are, for those that are viewing at home.
Geez, so young.
So young. And we'll get into that story because it's phenomenal. And Dad and I, we bond on adventure stories. Every Christmas, every birthday, I'm always giving him books about adventures around the world, and because we've really bonded through adventures, him and I, whether it be Mount Everest, going through Tibet, Advanced Base Camp on Everest. We did Machu Picchu together, Inca Trail. We did Kili. We did Papua New Guinea and the Kokoda Track, and all things on the bucket list, of course. And it was kind of my bucket list that really bonded us together as mates. And we weren't that close, I guess, when I was growing up. There's a whole other story there. But your Crossing the Ditch was a book that he gave me, and we just swapped notes on it, for years and years. It was fantastic. So I meet with him 11 o'clock every Friday, have coffee, and he's nearly 80, and he'll be stoked that I'm talking to you. So I've got bragging rights now, mate. So thank you very much. So you're on Bribie Island, an island off an island off an island. Love that. When you do travel, and you've traveled, whether it be for speaking, whether it be for adventures, what do you put on your incoming passenger card as your occupation?
Yeah, okay, so you have to be careful about what you do here. And I'll correct you on one thing. Bruny Island, not Bribie. Bribie's up in Queensland. Yeah, I used to, at times I have written down things like adventurer or kayaker or something like that. But then you get a lot of questions about gear. So you start wanting to know, have you got any tents? You got any equipment? Can we check that for dirt particles? All that sort of stuff. Are you using freshwater streams? And so right now I just write down presenter. That's what I write down. No one bats an eye at it. No one asks to see any kit or gear. it's the easiest way to fly through for me.
I like that. Never put adult film star trying to be funny, because Homeland Security, especially in the US, don't like that. I'll just FYI.
Have you done that?
No, I haven't. I know someone that has. It got him into hot water. Crossing the ditch. When did you guys do this? And what is the ditch? And why did you cross it?
Okay, crossing the ditch refers to, well, the ditch is that body of water between Australia and New Zealand. And so my mate Cass and I, it's not small. I mean, it's
I'm looking at a map now, guy. I'm looking at a map now. Just guys, just get out Google Maps and just check out how far is the distance between Australia and New Zealand.
Straight line between mainland Australia, so not Tassie, and New Zealand, it's roughly 2,200 kilometres in a straight line. And so the ditch refers
you did not do. You did not do.
We didn't. You brought it up.
There it is.
We did a 2-week circle in the middle of the ocean. So straight line distance, 2,200 kilometres. We actually worked out. We paddled 3,318 k's. So a touch over 50% extra, which is just
really
stupid. Yeah. We did a 2-week circle in the middle of the ocean. We got pushed around by currents. It was a phenomenal trip because we thought it was only going to take 35, 40 days. Took a maximum 50 days worth of food with us. And we're out there for 2 months, 62 days. It was pretty brutal. Yeah.
Mate, and the stories in this book are just amazing. And you've been speaking about it ever since. Did that kind of launch your speaking?
Yeah, definitely. So prior to doing the ditch, kayaking across the Tasman, I didn't even know this industry existed, the whole speaking industry. And literally, it was a really selfish trip to do. It was something that I wanted to do, Cass wanted to do, and that was it. And I expected to see, a handful of people on the beach, our friends, our family, some passers-by that got interested in it. We got there, we had 25,000 people down there on this beach to see two blokes who, two really average blokes stumble up this beach. And so there was demand for a book, a documentary, to share the story, and it kind of really propelled both Cass and I onto that speaking stage. And I was like, what is this industry? It's a glitch in the matrix. People are paying us to jump up on stage and talk stories about our trips.
Yeah.
But it also helps me kind of answer a question I'd been struggling with for a lot of my life. And the question is something my mum posed to me when I was a kid. It's what do you want to be when you grow up? And I never had a true answer to that. And I still, to a degree, am searching for that answer right now. But I thought after that expedition that maybe I can make adventure my life. Maybe I can go off and chase these trips and be able to make enough of an income through sharing the stories and tales through documentaries and on stage.
I mean, at the end of the day, the double kayak that you guys put together, the fundraising, what was the hard in the preparation? I mean, were you doing kayaking beforehand?
Look, not
sea kayaking?
We had a lot of sea kayaking experience because of the goal. But before we'd actually set ourselves the target or the goal of trying to do the ditch, I'd say no, not really. So my first real proper brush with kayaking was in 2001. So just finished school, first year uni, Cass, myself, and another friend. We decided to paddle down the entire length of the Murray River. So Australia's longest river, 2,500 odd kilometres. And that was over 49 days. And it was a real Huckleberry Finn style adventure. With a lot less racism, I guess. That book now doesn't really mark up.
Yeah, no, play on
standards. And it was an idea that popped up on that trip, and I really promptly pushed aside. I thought, no, it's ridiculous, it's impossible. And 3 years later, we reapproached the idea and started just trying to work out on paper whether it was possible, and that pushed us into the next. Initially 18 months of our lives where we worked on the risk mitigation alone, the plan. And after that, in total, 3.5 years of work, training, preparation, planning, building that kayak, all the systems we needed, getting that team on board before we finally felt ready to take on the Tasman Sea. And that's where the tens of thousands of kilometres of sea kayaking came in at that point.
You've always been an adventurer, though, growing up.
I had an adventurous childhood. I wouldn't say that I'm your classic adventurer. I mean, you see some blokes and you see that they're adventurous, outdoorsy through and through. I refer to myself as I'm half city rat, half bush rat. And I can play really well in both spheres. And I think that actually gives me a little bit of a competitive advantage in some regards because my entire makeup isn't just whether we succeed on an expedition or it's not just I have to be on an adventure to be happy. Don't get me wrong, it really helps. But I grew up in Indonesia in the jungles there and had a pretty wild childhood when I was really little. And I think
as you do, like until what age?
Well, so I was born in Oz, and then at 6 months of age moved to Indo. And then the first couple of years of that, I literally lived in the Sumatran jungles that there was no road access to and next to a gold mine. And I don't remember quite those days.
I wonder how he became an adventurer.
Well, the strange thing is I don't remember that period of time, but like part of the mythology of my life, and like my brother and my sister do, my parents obviously do, but it became part of me. Like these stories of anacondas out there, of tigers taking people from the camp around us.
What were your family doing over there? Was it involved in the mining or missionary, or what was?
Dad's a geologist, so in the mining industry. So it was a gold mine out there. So he was a geologist working in precious mineral exploration.
There you go.
And Mum is actually a Chinese-Indonesian sort of fishing village girl. Yeah, but the crazy thing is like you think that sort of instills a bit of a power dynamic in the family. It's completely opposite of what you're thinking. My mum is she's an Asian tiger mum, and she is the strongest person you'll ever meet.
Asian tiger mum. Vision, yeah. So, yeah, well, that would be, that's not your normal upbringing, I guess. So that explains probably a fair bit right there. Are we Googling how to cross, like, has anyone done this before, crossing the ditch?
The ditch, no. So the body of water between Australia and New Zealand, the only thing that had gone across really that was human-powered, one rowboat. A chap by the name of Colin Quincy had gone from New Zealand to Australia in a rowboat, left from the North Island and ended up in Queensland. And that was the only human-powered crossing of the Tasman. And so Cass and I, and kayaking, no one had done that. So we went out there and tried to do all the research we could in terms of that stretch of ocean, but then further afield who had done big ocean crossings. And the Atlantic was something that people had played around in and done. There was, I think, 3 or 4 crossings by that stage of the Atlantic, one partial crossing of the Pacific from California to Hawaii. And we started really researching what made those trips successful, what kind of gear they had, the mindset, the people, the teams, and finding a group of people that actually could help us on this.
If my memory serves me right, didn't a guy have a crack at it and pass away?
Yeah, a chap by the name of Andrew McCauley. I still refer to him as Australia's best kayaker. Like
he got really close too, didn't he?
68-ish k's off the coast of New Zealand, so he could see Milford Sound. He went for a pretty dynamic, hardcore approach. He went from Tassie down to the South Island, so staying in cold waters the entire time. And where we were up in the more northern stretch of the Tasman, we were dealing with big waves out there. We had like 10-meter waves in some of these storms. Down there in the southern Tasman, you're talking those waves would have been, 15, 20 meters. Phenomenal.
I mean, and so where did you leave from in Australia? For those people that are listening, watching from Australia, where did you leave from in our easternmost cape of Byron or no?
No, we left actually from Foster on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And there's actually a reason for it, because what roars down the coast of Australia is a current called the EAC, the East Australia Coast Current. And it comes down the coast and then it pushes out in what's called the Tasman Front. And this is kind of like an expressway across half of the Tasman Sea at least. And we knew that if we got into that current in Foster, it was the closest point where it was only 30 k's off the coast. And it was the most effective, efficient way to get into that current. If we'd left from Newcastle, it would have been 90 k's off the coast. If we left from Sydney, which we originally wanted to do, it would have been 120 k's off the coast. And then you got to deal with all the counter currents that sort of happen that come off that. And it can push you north or all over the place.
So where does that spit you out at? What, towards New Zealand? Yeah.
Yeah, towards New Zealand, like roughly halfway across New Zealand. So you go to Lord Howe Island and then a little bit further south. Like 400, 500 k's further south in Lord Howe.
And where did you start your 2 weeks of circles?
Yeah, around there.
Bring out the dark past or anything, but this is a podcast, this is a confessional, mate, so feel free.
Yeah, so the EAC roars down the coast of Australia, pushes down the Tasman Front, and then roughly halfway across, that current gets a little bit more confused. And what it actually does is it swirls around this big circle in the middle of the ocean. And, there's seamounts and all sorts of sort of interesting topography down there. But what happened to us is when we're sort of like down the bottom of that start of that circle and we were going to break free of it, we got hit by a storm that actually we couldn't paddle for 3 days straight and ended up pushing us into the current pattern. And we couldn't escape from it. We tried, like for a week, we were trying to, after that initial 3 days, we tried for a week to get out of it because literally the current pattern ended in 30, 40, 50 Ks and we couldn't make that headway. So we ended up having to paddle back to Australia 100 Ks, just slingshot out of it.
100K, just, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so you knew you were in it kind of straight away, or
yeah, well, I mean,
you're going north and you can't not go north anymore.
Yeah, good old GPS. I mean, yeah, you're looking at this dot move and just like it's moving in the wrong direction. And the reason why we kind of knew exactly where the current was, a couple of reasons. One, we'd done a half sort of curl around it already. And also we actually got a NASA via the CSIRO involved in the trip because they were actually analysing the currents for us and telling us where the boundaries were. So we kind of could make informed decisions out there about when to try and break free.
Talk to me about seasickness.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you...
Sucks.
So you capsized?
We never went fully over. So like if that's upright, you probably got down to about there and then it bounced back up because like you look at the shape of that kayak and there's this big sort of cabin on the back of it. And if I had my different setup here that I present with, I could show you pictures. Oh, there you go. Yeah,
a picture of the back of it there, and you guys were in the middle, and you had the same bit at the front.
Yeah, so that thing at the back.
You had
a
thing you could put over the top, yeah.
Oh no. So that's the only thing we could hide in there. We couldn't put anything over the top of us. No, yeah, but that thing there we'd hide into the back of in those big storms, and what it does is it acts like an air bubble to hold you upright. That didn't mean that at times waves didn't go over the top of the entire thing when we're both in the cabin with a parachute anchor out at the back. But seasickness was a really big issue because Cass, the bloke I went with, my mate, he gets chronically seasick. And the majority of people, if you get seasick, the majority of people can and will get used to it. He's like part of that 3 or 5% of the population that his middle inner ear just cannot get used to it.
There's... just on the book there, I'm just showing for those that are listening, there's your good self, mate, and looking beautiful in face called the zinc.
How's that mother of all cold sores as well on my face?
Not happy. Is that a cold sore?
Yeah, it's a cold sore gone rampant. Like it was started off as a little cold sore, but because of the sun and the exposure and everything, like it blister scab fall off because you wet the entire time and then just turned up to this big massive scab on my face. And there's really happy there.
Looking real seasick, yeah?
Yeah, he's not happy that day. That was kind of like in the circle.
And there's some water going over, I dare say, in front of you and between you and over the whole boat there.
Yeah, that was a nice dreary day, but we kind of accepted the fact that we were cabin bound that day. So this, put these covers on top of the cockpit holes and hid in the back.
There's a better picture of it, guys.
Yeah, that's the kayak.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
yeah,
that's awesome. Mate, and talk to me about nudity. You got a whole chapter dedicated to nudity in here. What's the story there,
mate? Fun? No jokes.
Nude maneuvers on the hippie trail. What?
So we were nude in the kayak in the cabin as much as possible, and the reason for that is you're constantly wet, so you've got to let your body's air out as much as possible, and even at the back there it was damp, so you didn't get fully dry or anything like that, but it allowed you to at least air out those parts of the body that are critical. So in particular, your bum and your groin.
Your junk,
yeah. Yeah, basically if you got, salt sores down there, they can end expeditions. So not pretty, but a harsh reality. I mean, you go into this cabin and like literally Cass and I sometimes like got legs spread eagle trying to air it out. It's not fun. But hey, you got to do what you got to do.
There's a better picture, guys, if you can see that. That's a really good description of what we're dealing with. Yeah. Mate, still mates?
Yeah, still mates. Not as strong as we were before. Life has taken us in different directions, but there was one stage there where I reckon I'd seen him nude more than his wife had, talking about nudity. It was quite an interesting thing. But since our next big expedition, post that, I decided to do a big family trip, and that kind of started the branch apart because of the storylines and the things we were doing. Our diaries were too hard to manage because we used to do a lot of speaking together, and that was just sort of like break apart point.
Yeah. What was the lowest of lows on that particular expedition, and what was the highest of highs?
I'm going to say the true lowest of lows was actually before the expedition even left. Yeah, we were meant to leave. So Andrew Macaulay he left on his expedition either ultra early 2007. We're both all late 2006. Like, my memory is just a little bit hazy. We were both trying to leave at the same time of year. We were both actually racing. It was a race to be the first kayak across the Tasman. And our kayak was a death trap. Like, so we had these issues with the fundamental design of the kayak. We tried, to fix it, and it turned into Band-Aid solution over Band-Aid solution. And then we went on one of our last sea trials before we wanted to head across the Tasman, and we're 10 k's off the coast of Sydney Harbour, and all this water started flooding into the cabin, into the kayak, and we didn't know where from. And so we had this terrifying 6-hour paddle back in, thinking that because of the way we've tried to fix this thing, we might have actually pushed it past its point of positive buoyancy, and if we get enough water in it, it's going to sink, because we had to put all this lead sort of down the center line of the kayak to hold it in the right sort of spot. Yeah, and then when we limped back into Sydney Harbour, it was realising that the kayak wasn't right. Andrew was out there, he was doing his thing, he was going great at that point in time, and this trip was, we're going to have to delay it and accept the fact there would be the second group of people to cross the Tasman. And when you've worked on something for 2.5 years at that point, you've had so many people say, no, you can't do it, it's impossible, and you've fought and rallied to get the funding, to do everything to get there, and it doesn't work, then it kind of felt like a huge blow. And then when Andrew disappeared, it made the harsh reality of this trip so real. I think there's a lot of youthful bravado or arrogance that goes into a trip like this that makes you think, we're invincible. And so when he disappeared, kayak wasn't working. It was, pretty bloody low. The only other person I could really rely on was Cass.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, do we do these things to be the first? Is it ego, or is it just it's never been done before? Like that's the thing. I've always wanted to do something on my bucket list and be the first to do something. And I've got to check in with myself and go, well, is that just for bragging rights, or is it, is it because it's never been done before and I just humbly want to do? I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic.
I don't think there's any right or wrong to whatever the reasoning is. I mean, like with the thing like your bucket list, you could want to do something for the first time because there's something really beautiful and simple and honest about treading new ground. There's something really is.
I love that.
And for me, that's a big part of it. Doing something that no one had done, and to be able to have that pride and be able to look back and go, look what we've achieved. People thought that was impossible, and we've paved the steps for people to follow in the future and for people to build on. And that said, I think when I was young, maybe a little bit more into the bragging of it, hey mate, as a young bloke, I'm searching for significance. I'm searching for not necessarily attention, but I want to matter. And when you do something that people have failed doing, or seem impossible, it's pretty cool. It gives you that kick to your ego. That's a positive thing.
It's a balance between that sort of ego and just a pioneering spirit, right? And it's it's an interesting way to put it. It's really honest. It's truthful. I love that. What hasn't been done yet? Seemingly, it's. I follow a lot of adventurers, and they're all, people are doing weird stuff every other day now, and with social media, it's just got got worse or better. Depends on which way you look at it.
Yeah, depends.
Is there something that you know of as an adventurer that hasn't been done yet? It's maybe been tried by other people, hasn't been done yet. Yeah, that you know of.
I mean, there's tons of things. Like pick a field, and I'm not talking about a contrived thing. Like you could contrive anything. So you could be, if you wanted to be, the first pogo stick across Australia, if you really wanted to. I mean, and I'm not saying I'm not, and I'm not taking away from that, but I mean,
yeah, you can do it in a Star Wars outfit. You can do, whatever. Yeah.
And for me, like I don't believe in doing something just to make it harder. So I struggle a little bit sometimes with mountaineering, because in my mind, don't get me wrong, I love mountaineering and I've done a bit of it. But say, for example, if you've got a mountain, it's in front of you and you want to climb it, it makes the most sense, really, to take the easiest route up it. It's conservation of energy. Whereas you see people go out of their way to take the absolute hardest line on it. It's borderline, is it possible or not? I'm like, I get it, you want to test yourself with what you're doing there, but you could do that elsewhere. And what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get to the top of that mountain, or are you trying to prove something? And that's not to say it's not awe-inspiring. It is. It's super cool. So it depends on that goal. But say, for example, kayaking. No one's kayaked across the Pacific Ocean, I believe, for example. No one's probably done a swim across. I'm just using Tasman as a vessel, a swim across the Tasman Sea. And I know some people that have, thought about doing that or have started planning trips like that. But how do you actually go about doing that?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things out there. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to take mad enough to try and take a wingsuit, say, off K2, for example. I don't know what the air is going to be like, the thinness to try and do something. But that's what I'm saying. There's crazy things out there. Now, I know I've just ragged on the idea of taking a pogo stick across Australia. Have you seen that clip recently of a guy using a carpet and he's wingsuiting on a carpet?
Yes, I did. It was only in the last week.
Yeah,
and he's literally flying on a carpet.
It's unbelievable.
And it's next level. Is that stuck to him? It must be, because it looks too good.
I don't think so. Like, what
is it deep fake? Is it deep fake?
No, I reckon it's legit real. I mean, a deep fake would do that wrong, I think. I think what he's done is he's got a carpet and he's actually put a bar through the top of it and rolled it down.
Got to have, because he's hanging on it, isn't he? Yeah.
And he might have actually got some Velcro patches to keep it aligned in the right spot. But it is so cool. It's like I'm got Aladdin running through my brain as that thing's flying. It's awesome.
And the best part of crossing the ditch?
The best part of crossing the ditch. There's a lot of best parts. And there's a lot of really bad parts as well. I mean, the current going around in circles was bad. I mean, the storms were bad. Stuck in that cabin, bad. I get seasick, chronically seasick. That's really bad. So I hated the cabin. No, not seasick. Sorry, chronically claustrophobic. So I hated the cabin. But for me,
live in a cabin now down in Tassie.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty good though. It's pretty cold. The best part, this is going to sound odd, the sunsets and sunrises were pretty amazing. And the conditions, seeing that soft, gentle light sort of shimmer every day, it was different depending on the conditions. Being in an ocean that's completely becalmed, where the water looks like velvet underneath you and you can't hear any sound, so it feels and sounds like there's 1,000 cicadas going in your ears because your ears searching for something to listen to. Just that kind of experience. In paddling, I think it was on day 4 at night time, we had to paddle through the night and we took turns and water was splashing over me and paddling along, but the way the stars were that evening was just phenomenal. And it was just like, it's my first experience with flow state in my life, and I've been chasing that feeling for the rest of it.
How good is that? And that's very very much in par with what mountaineers will say. When they go up and they summit a mountain, it's the sunrises of seeing everything from that vantage point. I remember, it's only a small mountain, but I remember just being up in Kilimanjaro. I was the first up on. Me and a Sherpa went up, and Dad didn't make it, unfortunately. Got altitude sickness at high camp, and it was just me and the Sherpa up there, the first ones up on that summit, and look over the summit, being the highest person in Africa at that point in time, watching the African sunset come up, sunrise come up. It was just something you just can't get rid of, right? And I can just fully appreciate those. See, I would have said, seeing everyone at the end and bonding with my mate. That I'm sure that's on the list as well as the highlights. But I totally get, that flow state.
Yeah. It's a funny one. People are, my favorite thing in the world to do is actually is bushwalking. I'm a bushwalker by nature. And someone asked me just recently, it's like, what is what is the thing you love the most about bushwalking? And yes, it's close to saying nature and all those things, and the moments you capture where there's frost on the ground in a certain way and the way the light twinkles on it. That's second. The top one is actually the breaks, because you've earned the breaks. You've put in the slog to get there at that point where you're having that view and you've earned that, and that feeling of earning it is phenomenal.
Love that. You didn't stop there. You decided to not just cross a ditch, but then you cross some ice. What was that all about?
Yeah, so Cass and I, suckers for punishment, I guess, decided to do...
What was the break between ditch and ice?
The break was 3 3/4 years between those expeditions. And we decided to do an expedition down in Antarctica, somewhere a little bit colder. I probably should say a lot of people post Tasman were saying to us, "Oh, you are the kayakers. Where are you going to kayak to next? What's the next kayaking adventure?" And for me in particular, I don't want to be an expert in any one field. I want a plethora of different experiences. And so for me, going out down to Antarctica, one, I've always wanted to see Antarctica, just experience what that place is like. But the idea of doing a trip on snow is an extenuation of bushwalking, because it's bushwalking on snow, basically. You're skiing, whereas kayaking for me felt like bushwalking on water. And we decided to try and ski from the geographical coast of Antarctica to the South Pole and back, completely unsupported. And so I needed to find the geographical coast. That's where the land ice meets the sea ice, where the coastal landmass of Antarctica is. The trip still remains to be done. If Trav, if you want to do it, or someone listening to this wants to do it, with 1 foot in the water to the South Pole and back. But that said, this trip that Cass and I did still remains the longest unsupported polar adventure of all time, or expedition of all time.
From where to where?
We left from a place called Hercules Inlet to the South Pole and back, and other groups and trips have tried to do similar or longer distances and have failed.
How many Ks is that?
That trip we did was 2,285 Ks. Yeah. Okay. It's a bit of a distance.
You're not a kayaker, so you're an adventurer. What was the prep? I mean, have you done much snow? Have you done much ice? Have you,
no,
been in that environment? No, just had a...
Our first experience properly skiing. My first proper experience on snow, I think, happened in 2009 mountaineering, 2008, 2009 mountaineering. And then the first time on skis properly was 15 months before we headed down to Antarctica.
Bullshit.
Yeah, learn how to ski 15 months beforehand. And it was...
Kidding, mate. That's... Who's the bigger... I won't say idiot. Who's the bigger driver behind? I mean, do you and Cass just have a couple of beers and go, "Hey, I'm looking at this thing in National Geographic, and I reckon who's the driver behind this, or are you both as bad as each other?"
I'll say probably Cass, like in that regards, or at least for those trips. I mean, the Tasman was an idea that popped up on the Murray River, and that was Cass just shit talking, basically. And then we approached it. And then when we were on the Tasman, Antarctica was something we talked about. And that was Cass kind of shit talking about it. But like, don't get me wrong, like he didn't have an unwilling partner with me to talk about it. But then it was actually literally when we got to New Zealand and he's like, "Hey, let's consider Antarctica." I'm like, "Dude, we just paddled across a ditch. Let's just celebrate that, please." But yeah, there's something really addictive about adventure and about that feeling of flow and purpose. Because life becomes so simple. It's really binary. You achieve your mission and you survive, or you don't. And that's really
interesting. What's at the South Pole?
The South Pole. There's actually, there's a couple of things. So there's a lot more than you'd actually expect. So there's a whole scientific base down there where they've got this, they do all sorts of crazy sort of observations because they've got, half the year is basically it's a 24-hour darkness. And the other half not. But they've all these seismic arrays down there, sensors in the ground that they've got in the ice that allows them to basically pick up on any tectonic activity around the world. If anyone's using a nuke, they're able to do atmospheric studies, ice core studies, work out what the world's like. So huge base. It's thriving in summer. They probably get a couple hundred people down there in summer. And then there's also a couple of South Poles, which sounds odd. The ceremonial South Pole, there's this barbershop pole with this round globe on it, which is, what's classified as the center. But then there's also another pole that's the geographical South Pole. So literally the point where, and it's shifting because the ice cap is actually moving slightly. So it shifts every year and they have to move it. This other
literally
pole.
Move the pole.
Yeah, they have to move this
so
pole.
Maybe the pole could be, hopefully not underwater at some stage. But
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing. So the magnetic pole, the magnetic pole is moving at the moment. We are in the midst of a shift. So it's actually currently on its way up to Adelaide. And I think in something like 400 years' time, we'll be up near around Adelaide and it's speeding up. And then we're going to get a pole switch where north is going to go south and south's going to go north.
So to all you doomsdayers out there that are watching and listening, just build that bunker.
Build that bunker, but be careful. Yeah, magnetic declination is going to become more of an issue. Put it that way. When we were
See what
traveling
you've
to the South
moved
Pole,
now. Like, you're not above ground right now, are you? You've got spam all around you. You've got a lot of weapons.
yeah, man, I've surrounded my lovely wood paneling just to trip it. That's actually a light over there. Great.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So, how long did that take you from? Where'd you say the sea ice from the? Yep. How long to the South Pole and back?
It took 89 days, so 3 months.
89 days. And you guys were the first to do that.
First to do this expedition alongside a Norwegian chap who we were actually racing. So out of the woodwork, when we were in South America, this bloke comes out of nowhere and is basically doing the same expedition as us. And he's a Norwegian polar guide. He's climbed Mount Everest and 2 other 8,000 meter peaks, and he's Norwegian, so he's a crack skier. And there's us, Jamaican bobsled team, just learn how to ski. And so we're racing this fella, and I honestly think, it's been a while now. It's been 12 years since that expedition, and no one has actually ever replicated that trip. And I think it's because, and Alex is of this opinion as well, it's because there were 2 teams down there that year, and we were both pushing each other along the way. And so, that's the only reason why this trip was able to be unlocked, I think.
Highs and lows of that one.
Highs, I'm going to go with seeing Alex wait at the finish line. He ended up waiting. He was ahead of us by 2 days, and he ended up stopping 3 kilometers short of the finish line and waiting for 2 whole days for Cass and I to conclude that expedition with him. So
wow,
that's a pretty epic high, that one.
That's I think I saw that. Yeah, that's freaking amazing, isn't it? Would you have waited for him?
It's an interesting thing because I don't know. I'd like to think, given that circumstance, yes, but he was under insane amount of pressure from the authorities to get out of there. They were trying to say, look, every day that you are not accounted for and at a base, you're at risk to yourself and to the people that might potentially have to rescue you. So they were putting so much pressure on him, and he was steadfast in saying that no, he wasn't going to. And the reason why I like to think that I would have waited is because, one, there was a definite thought that this trip, we had unseasonable weather. We had 1.5 feet of snowfall. It's classified as a desert. You don't expect that kind of precipitation, and you're dragging a sled that weighs 160 kilos at the start.
Sorry, mate. What time of year did you do this?
Oh, this is summer. This was November 2nd to whatever it was. Actually, to January 26th or whatever it was. No, later November 2nd.
Would you have waited for him?
I'd like to think so, but one thing that really goes through my mind a lot is, with a lot of sport, with a lot of adventure, with how Australians are in particular made up, there's a whole competitive angle. We're always, I've got to beat you. It's on the sporting field. There's no mates on the sporting field if you're on the opposition. And Alex kind of showed me a different way about it. If you can do things with other people and sharing that victory with other people, you actually get a greater appreciation and more joy. Literally, I don't want to be a person that stands on a mountaintop looking down at people. I want to think about the number of people I can share that view with instead now. And
that's a good segue too. I had Nat Cook, who you'd know, on the podcast just recently. I've had a few sporting icons and adventurers, and we're around a lot of other adventurers, sporting icons, etc., on the speaking circuit. And so the average, I guess, conference that you do, you've got middle management in there. Let's say it's Telstra, which is a telecommunications company here in Australia, or it's an insurance company or whoever. And you've got people that are in the 40-40-40 plan, or 40 hours a week for 40 years of their life, possibly, to live on 40% of their peak. They got the mortgage, they got the kids at home, they got 2-income household. How is your story relevant to me? When I'm average Joe, I guess. Nothing against people paying mortgages, nothing against people who have kids, and people, who are in middle management at all. But you know what I mean? Like, one of the things that I'm quoted on probably the most is people are dying at 40 and being buried at 80. That spirited adventure maybe is long gone. And that's all well and good for you, Jonesy, but what about me?
Well, one thing that I do when I jump up and do a presentation, and like I've got no airs about myself. Like I'm a really simple, ordinary, average bloke. I really am. I'm not the smartest guy out there, not the fittest, not the best looking. I'm not A grade in anything. I'm. If you went back to school and asked anyone who's going to be an adventurer, definitely wasn't me. It definitely wasn't. And like, so I showcase myself in its rawest form, and it's really average. And the audience can see that and bond with that. So you get Olympians or sports people come in, and some of these people are genetically gifted. They're
100%.
look like a brick shit house, and they're unbelievably athletic. I'm so clumsy. My wife throws things at me. I'll bat it out of the air rather than catch it because I know I'm gonna drop it. And so it's about realizing that it's not about what lottery you won in terms of genetic makeup. It's about mindset. It's about purpose. It's about planning, preparation. It's about wanting to do something. And for me, the last thought that I want people to leave people with is the fact that the saddest thing that we can do as individuals, you, me, or as members of a family or a community or a company, is to let your dreams die a quiet death in the corner of your mind. You've got to let those dreams out, because if you do, then you bring your whole self to everything you do. You bring your whole self to your workplace, because, passionate people, they're so attractive. You see someone who's chasing their thing, and it's so awe-inspiring. And that's what we need in society if we're going to get through all the drama that we've got ahead of us. We need people being their best. And it doesn't have to be paddling a kayak across the Tasman Sea or down in Antarctica. It can be on the sporting field, on the weekend sporting field, if that's what you do. It can be in the dramatic arts. It can be in a small business. It can be just doing something that makes your heart sing. It's your adventure is yours. No one can tell you what it's going to be. And yeah, that's why I think it's relevant.
That's perfect. And it's in that, and you're big on this, it's in that area of, embracing discomfort, I dare say. Doing hard things on purpose is where you grow, right? And in my vocab, I try and graduate everyone as a bucket lister. Someone who's out there living their bucket list, glass half full rather than half empty, and being the example for others to follow, not in a put me on a pedestal kind of way. And you're certainly not that. And I think that's why people love you, is you're not putting yourself on a pedestal, say I'm perfect or genetically, gifted, or here's my gold medal and you can't touch it, get a selfie. Like you're just average bloke having a crack, and you can too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's glorying in the fact that we are all gloriously average, and yet we're capable of so many amazing things if we want to. It's just about that mindset. It's about that belief, and it's about that want and desire, and finding a community of people that will help support you. I think that's really important. I think too often, I think one of the most toxic and terrible things you can do is announce a dream to a group of people that's going to shoot it down, because they're very precious, and you've got to find fertile soil for those things to land in so they don't die in the first couple of days,
Mate, you're big on these, on your website, micro adventures, which sort of dovetails into that. What do you regard as a micro adventure? And you've done some micro adventures yourself.
Look, micro adventures is it's such a broad term, and it was first coined, I believe, by Alistair Humphreys. He's a super bloke. I love the guy. I know him. And he coined this term micro adventures, and they're basically small little things you can do in those moments between work. So 5 p.m. you knock off work, 9 a.m. you start. What mischief can you get up to? What adventure? What kind of thrills? Not necessarily thrill-seeking, but what can you do that's a little bit out of your ordinary that gets you uncomfortable?
Legal. Let's just put in a disclaimer there, kids. Legal. Adventure. Yep.
100%. I mean, in my mind, my definition of adventure is, everyone's is different, but mine is an activity with an unknown outcome. That's all an adventure is. And so Alistair started pushing this idea that, go off and sleep rough, sleep in nature overnight, go catch a train, go as far as you can on that train, find somewhere, set up a tent, sleep there, and then make your way back, go for a wild swim. And I love that concept. But for me, micro adventures can get a little bit bigger than that. It can be, deciding to just, hell, it's in today's day of routine where I know where everything goes, my schedule's all laid out in my diary. You know what? I'm going to break that up, and I'm going to jump off that train at a certain point. I'm not going to look at my Google Maps to navigate me, and I'm going to try and work out how to get from here to where I'm meant to be going. And you can end up in the most zany little spots, and that's an idea of a micro adventure. But then you can go more traditional. I classify this just jumping into your kayak and then going for a paddle down a stretch that you don't really know, that's not a training run, and exploring that bit of coastline, that's a micro adventure. And I'm not saying to do this because this would be illegal, but hey, it would be fun to do. If you're in Sydney, go out and sleep on some of those harbour islands, I don't know, overnight. Paddle out in a kayak.
I feel like you've thought that through, that one.
Maybe I've jumped in some swimming pools that I shouldn't have been in as well.
Totally. Jesse Isler, you may or may not know, he's a big advocate for micro adventures as well, that helped coin the phrase, I guess, or reiterate it. And he schedules 6 micro adventures per year, scheduled, plans them out at the start of the year. And I think that's the ripple effect from that micro adventure mindset is really what you're talking about, right? Is explore the unexplored, put yourself in situations that you don't know the end result. And that spirit of adventure, that's what it's all about.
Spontaneity, resilience, all these things come from it. Adaptability, creativity. So the great thing about a micro adventure is there's a pretty finite end to it. You know roughly what the end's going to be. It's not generally life-threatening, but you know when the end's going to be, so you can tough it out if you have to, if everything goes to shit. But you come back with that with so much more resilience, or you experience at least. And then you can bring that across to other facets of your life. So yeah, I 100% wholeheartedly agree.
Just quickly, talk to me about doing hard things on purpose. Where are you at with that statement? Doing hard things on purpose.
So this is an interesting one. I fall into traps. I fall into traps all the time. And I am a firm believer in what Jim Collins says, good is the enemy of great. I think when you're comfortable, you can fall into a rut where you don't grow as much as you should be. You're not living life to your fullest extent. For me, I'm trying to make things a little bit simpler at the moment, just because family-wise, my wife and I and kids, we're working through some changes about where our family wants to be in the long term, the future. And so, going through the sale and attempted purchase of properties is a tiring and emotional thing. And that's been dragging on for months at the moment. So I've been trying to make my life easier in some regards, but by doing easier things, I also crave a bit of adventure in the areas that I love, which is the outdoors. So diving for me is a huge sense of, if I want a micro dose of adventure in a very short amount of time, I think there's 2 sports you can do that give you that. One is canyoning, phenomenal adventure you can have. The other one is diving. I'm talking free diving, spearfishing, cray diving. As soon as you enter the water, you become part of the food chain and you're not at the top. And it's so humbling. It forces awareness into your environment.
About adventure and this sort of thing. You just went straight to food chain.
Well, the thing is, it's a really good reminder, because humans, we build ourselves up where we're the most important, powerful thing on this planet. And yes, en masse, we really are. But in individuals, we're so soft and pudgy and soft, lovely flesh. They're really bones that break quite easily. But these brains are what sets us apart. And so to be able to enter an environment like that forces you to be part of nature, for me, that really calms the restlessness I have inside. It does so much for me, and it gives me a feed, which is really nice because I love to eat.
I want to ask you. It just popped in my head. Have you applied for a loan?
I have been speaking to people about it, and I will at some point finish my application. I've done 2 half applications for it.
Come on, I can see this. I can see this big time.
Yeah, have you?
I was shortlisted for Survivor last year. I did the interviews, and I said something wrong in the interview, and it was down to the one before the final cut, and not a lot of people know this, but I was nearly on Survivor, and I think the question was, because I'd never watched it, I watched it when it first started in Australia, and I've never watched it since. And I actually said, "Is it still on TV?" I didn't even know, and I think that offended them. And I'm like, "Who won? I don't know what happens. What do you still play games and stuff?" And sort of took the piss out of it. And I think they wanted more super fans on there. But the alone thing is a fantastic bonder for Dad and I, because we are couch survivalists, and I can't believe he ate that. I can't believe he went for that sort of shelter, and mate, that's got you written all over it.
Well, it's an interesting one because I absolutely love the show. I've loved the North American version of it. I love the Australian version of it. But the one thing, and I really wanted to it, but there's a side of it. I've made TV, I've made documentaries, I've made TV specials for some of the big networks, and reality is an interesting thing. I mean, like for me to go on that as a contestant, you can't control that narrative. And Alone is a lot more pure than, say, Survivor would be. And Survivor is a lot more pure than Too Hot to Handle would be, for example. But it still falls in that category.
Do you get that show down in Tassie?
It's on Netflix. My wife, I think, might turn it on every now and then.
Yeah, whatever. You're more, going off the book. I'm just saying, you're more Naked and Afraid. I reckon that's your show.
To be honest, I want to make a show. I've got some ideas, and so with my documentary background, I've got some ideas for shows, and I'm slowly working on them that I think would be epic, and I think you and your dad would love to sit down. It'd be of the category of Alone, if not even a touch better, like, because there's different elements to it. So
sign us up. We'll kill each other, but sign us up.
Okay.
Mate, I love that. And look, I could really see you doing that. Did you see the guy that killed that Wolverine in America?
It was
Joe Rogan.
So on season 7, Jason or Justin or
Wolverine.
Like, yeah. Oh, mate, he was really pissed off at it because it was eating his fat. I think his moose fat. Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, and that's the crazy thing about he clubbed it, didn't he?
He clubbed it. He shot it with an arrow through its Achilles or something like that, and then clubbed it, and then went like jumped on it with his hands.
Hardcore. I can't remember if it's like season 7 and season 8 of the American Alone is probably the best 2 seasons. And like in one episode, I think the guy shoots a muskox and he clips it, and he ends up he dispatches it by jumping in and out with a knife, like running around. And I'm like, dude, hardcore. Like it's just that American one is wild. Dealing with bears and seriously big predators is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, we're off tangent now. Look, anyway, we could talk about that for ages. Yeah, definitely do. Like, you should be doing a doco. Have you ever thought about going down the YouTube monetizing YouTube channels and doing all that?
Yeah, look, one thing that I've always been really bad at is actually doing the social. Like, as much as I'm an open book and I share a lot of my life, there's certain elements and chapters I'm really private about, and the reason for it is it's not because I don't have the content or I don't have the personality. I don't think it's more because, well, what stops me is this thing runs through my head is like, who really gives a shit about what I do? You know, I'm just a bloke. Yeah. Honestly,
we share the same. We share the same limiting belief. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, who really gives a shit about
Mr. Bucket List guy, and you should have your own YouTube channel. I'm like everyone's kind of doing their bucket list, aren't they? But no, they aren't. Yeah. Oh, we'll
maybe what we should do is I go, all right, well, I'll hold you accountable, and then by the end of the year, you've got to film 3, YouTube webisodes, and I'll have filled 3 YouTube webisodes or something. How about that?
Yeah, I reckon yours would be just a little bit better than mine.
No, I don't know. It could be pretty shoddy.
Well, I don't know. You ditch and ice, and I've got go surfing.
But basically, the ditch is me crying in the Tasman. The Antarctica is me crying in Antarctica. The Outback was me crying in the Outback. It's a bit silly. I mean,
no, I love it, dude. Hey, look, let's wrap this up. I've got a question for you. Look, actually, I've got to ask you, definitely, what are the big things on your bucket list, going forward that you can think of?
One thing that we haven't really touched on, it leads into what my bucket list thing is I did another expedition where my wife and I walked for 102 days across the Australian outback with our daughter when she was 1.
Fuck, I don't even know. How long is it? We've been going for nearly an hour. Okay, so and you're still together?
Ultra quick, yeah. We walked 1,800 kilometres, 102 days from the centre of Australia down towards Port Augusta. My wife and I, when our daughter Morgan was 15 months old. And so, epic, crazy expedition, like hardest thing I've ever done in my life because you're there with your daughter and your wife. So all arguments come home with you. And so, on my bucket list, a big thing is I would love to do another expedition with my other daughter because it feels really rough to have done this epic odyssey with Morgan and then Dylan just goes to Jamboree. That just doesn't quite, or Wet and Wild, it just doesn't work. So we were planning a trip, the cycle the length of New Zealand. COVID ruined those plans. So there will be another expedition, potentially a big sailing trip with the family at some point in time. And I've got a lot of other things I want to do. The TV show idea is another thing on my bucket list. But personally, a big adventure that I want to do, I don't know where this fits in my life, and I think it's more when I'm a little bit older and the kids are older. I'd love to row across the Pacific. It's not something that hasn't been done before. People have done it, but I just would love to row across that body of ocean. I mean, that's talking like 270 to 330 days out there, and I've got friends that have done it. You know, it'd be phenomenal.
Wow. What sort of boat would you do that? Same sort of
like
thing?
an ocean rowing boat. I wouldn't kayak. It's makes
like
better sense. Yeah,
full rowing. Okay.
Use your legs. It's your biggest muscle area for a reason.
God damn it. Well, mate, look, I can't wait to follow those adventures, that's for sure. And I know you it sounds negative, but it's a good addiction. And it's the spirit of adventure, the spirit of pioneering. I can see it. I can feel it. You're passionate about it. And, you know, that's why people love you. And that's why people have, you know, just been so engaged in your message over the years and all the stuff that you've put out. So, mate, thank you so much for, you know, jumping on the Bucket List Life podcast. And I'm so stoked that we made this happen. How can people connect with you, bro?
Mate, I suppose it depends what your social media of choice really is. I mean, it's really a personal Instagram, but Justin R. Jonesy is that. Feel free to reach out, send me a message on that. I always like to help people on their own adventures as well. If you're more corporately minded, LinkedIn, Justin R. Jonesy, but my website's justinjonesy.com. You can find out all the details there. And, mate, I'm going to say to you, I look forward to watching your first webisode that you're going to release on YouTube, or whatever that is.
We'll definitely put it together.
Yeah.
Naked and Afraid, episode 1.
That'd be quite funny, just in the backyard. Naked and afraid in various urban environments.
Help. All right. Thanks, mate. Cheers for that.
Good to see you properly in person.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bucket List Life podcast with the world's #1 bucket list expert, Trav Bell. For more great content, go to www.thebucketlistguy.com. We'll see you next time.